Finance Committee to order. Seeing no one in the public, we'll skip over public participation. And now we will move to discussion of warrant articles. Tara Friedrichs wanted to come tonight and discuss Article 28. I told her that if there was discussion of Article 28 to be had, we can have it before the town meeting starts, as opposed to election night. With that, I sent you a email yesterday saying that Articles 13 and 15 have come alive. And Jeff, do you have any further information other than the rather sketchy information I provided in the email? You do? Well then, go right ahead.
Microphone.
Unaccustomed as I am to public speaking. So a couple of, first a procedural thing. The reason why all four union contract articles were on the consent calendar was the town was assuming that we would take no action, and therefore. However, now that two of the bargaining units have had an agreement, Article 13 and 15 will not be on the consent calendar. It will have to be voted separately. And because Steve has all his tick and tie numbers all tied out, he has decided, the town manager, that it will come out of regular budget for fiscal 19. What that practically means, instead of adding, in this case, $50,000 and $20,000 to the budget, there'll be $50,000 and $20,000 less turnback at the end of 19. So they're going to self-fund, if you will, these additions. Okay, so
Yeah, I think it was going to cost us more than $20,000 to change the warrant in all my slides, all the backup.
So Article 13 is the police patrol. There are 32 officers that are covered under this, and the $50,000 would mean that there is a $3.5 million payroll. 2.5, sorry. The what was offered to the patrolmen was a 1-year extension to the 3-year contract they currently have, with a 2% merit and cost of living increase to the tables. And the town manager wishing to not lock in the next town manager with a 3-year contract. So that was the thinking on the town's part. The patrolman thought about it and said, sure, would be happy to do a 1-year. Perhaps they wouldn't have been agreeing for 3 years. In point of fact, what that means is there's a table for the patrolman. It has 7 steps to it, and what that means is the 7 pay rates, and 2% will be added to each of those 7 steps. It's not an automatic raise every year. Every patrolman gets a review, and they are maxed out at 7. So if you have a patrolman that's been here, let's say 10 years, and has gotten 7 or 8 reviews, they would only be at step 7. Unlike the school, which continues on in their tables. That's the maximum. The additional part of the bargain, which I think was a great win-win for everybody, currently I believe we pay $48 an hour for extra details. That's when the power company or electric company are out fixing things on the street, and you have to have a patrolman on duty. It's a wash through the books of the town, but the patrolman gets $48 and we charge the user $48. And the patrolman wished to get some more overtime, more money. Clearly, when we hired 8 new patrolmen, the amount of overtime has gone down, so the actual pay that our officers are getting has gone down. And this is kind of a win-win. It's going from $48 to $52, not a huge amount of increase, but that's passed on to the people that have to hire policemen for their duties, extra duties. As a data point, evidently Concord charges $56 an hour. So we're still, not making it prohibitive to do work in our town. And I think it's a state law that requires that certain kinds of activities on public ways, you must have a patrol person, a licensed police officer present. So that's what Article 13 is. The cost is really not $50,000. It was kind of a roundup. I did some math with the 50 and 20, and it doesn't tie exactly to the payroll. It's a little bit higher, but I don't want to split hairs on that because it's going to be absorbed by the, whatever it is, probably a little bit less in the operating budget, and then it will just impact the turn back at the end of the year. So I guess we'll stop there on 13. Anybody have any questions?
Yeah, Jeff, is the existing contract then extended in all other provisions? I mean,
Everything's the same. The only
they have uniform allowances, they have stipends for this, they have ammunition allowances for practice, they have all sorts of things.
Everything is the same.
Everything's the same.
And I pushed a little bit on what does a 2% raise do. It means the only additional cost is unfunded pension liability goes up 2%, so we have to fund it. Additional 2% on the, I think, 11.5% that we pay now on salary. So as salary goes up 2%, the pension costs will go up accordingly.
Tom?
Steve, and Jeff, I'm confused by what the 50,000 is actually funding.
Oh, so the regulation in the state is that anytime a new contract is signed, town meeting has to approve of the increment over the previous contract because they approved the previous contracts. So you have to get that approval for the first year. And then if it was a 3-year contract, it wouldn't come before town meeting for 2 more years. But since this is a 1-year contract, it'll come now and again at the next available town meeting is the way the wording is. And since this one happened quickly, they said they could get it in time. So I move that we recommend Article 13.
Okay, discussion. So we're doing 2% of $2.5 million?
Well,
Is that roughly what we're talking about?
but $2.5 million includes the next group, so it's a little bit less than the 50,000 on here. But since we're not raising and appropriating, I didn't feel that it was that critical that we, start arguing about what the exact number is.
Other discussion? Questions? Gonna go easy on them? Okay. It's been moved and seconded that we recommend Article 13. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. And I guess we'll make Bob an abstention.
So, Mr. Chairman, if I could discuss Article 15.
Go right ahead.
Article 15 is for the police superior officers. And they chose that word, I didn't, or the town didn't. And if I were a patrolman, I would kind of wonder about that.
We are on TV and they are out tonight. I passed quite a few patrolmen on the way in.
So, for those unfamiliar, this is for the sergeants and lieutenants. There are 8 of them, and the chief and deputy chief are under a different category altogether. The lieutenants and sergeants each have a different number of steps in their table. The sergeants have 7 steps like the patrolmen, the highest step being 75,500. And lieutenants have 10 steps, the highest being 95,800. And I'm told that we have many seasoned superior officers, and so most of them are at their maximum steps. So theoretically, I suppose, part of the reason they could be putting in a little bit more money is if you had somebody at step 5 and they were going to get a raise to step 6, they'd get a 1 or 2% raise going one step and then another 2% because the step went up. So there is a little bit of compounding, and especially in the patrolmen. When we hired 8 new ones, they're going to be progressing up to 7 steps. But the lieutenants and sergeants are pretty seasoned, and most of them, if not all of them, are already at the top step. They agreed with the patrolmen and said, we'll take a 2% for 1 year as well. The same $48 to $52 for extra detail. I don't know how often they do it, but I'm sure that they occasionally take some of those duties as well. And like the Article 13, it will no longer be in the consent decree. It will be a separate article that will have to be voted on individually. Questions to me? I move that we recommend Article 15.
Was there, okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Actually, I think it was only a couple of years ago, Jeff, that lieutenants could do paid details. I think that was part of the last contract negotiation. I think sergeants always could, but I think lieutenants were. All right, then, do you want to say something, Jason?
Quick comment. Does this bode that other unions are going to settle for a 2%?
I'll get to that as soon as we have this vote.
Okay, all in favor of recommending Article 15, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. It passes.
Okay, so I also had Article 14 and 16. Let me bring you up to, if I may, Mr. Chairman.
Sure.
Article 14 is for the dispatch. And there are 12 people in dispatch, 2 separate tables, one for the supervisor and one for the other 11 dispatchers. And they're represented by the Teamsters Union. They were offered the same 1 year, 2%. Decide now before town meeting so we can get it in. They chose not to accept that. They have no obligation to. And their first meeting is scheduled for April 25th. And it's my expectation that negotiations will, in a fair, in a positive way, carry on until the new town manager comes on board and will sign a 1 year or 3 year, whatever he or she decides to do. But the dispatchers were not either, didn't want to do it that quickly for 2%. Article 16 is for the highway, municipal properties, and cemetery. And lots of people, got to coordinate all kinds of people with different agendas and different lawyers and et cetera. And they just didn't want to get rushed to agreeing to that. And I think, if I hear both sides of the story, neither party thinks the other party really wanted to get it done in time for a town meeting. So no expectation as to what the amount will be, but 2 out of 4, at least that's something. I asked about regular employees, and I don't remember what was in the budget. Do you, the budget Saturday, I know we asked the question, and I thought, was it 2.5?
I don't remember exactly. I think it was 2.5.
Was it? But there's been a long tradition that non-union employees tend to get the same package as the unions have negotiated. So if we had a placeholder of 2.5, and if 2 unions got 2, and short of something crazy happening in the next few months, I would expect we have a little cushion in the non-union salary line. Today, the budget detail book went to press, and we'll be able to get it first night of town meeting, or can we get it earlier? Can we get the budget detail book earlier?
It was posted today, or printed, it was at the printer today, so I'm not sure, Jeff. We're going to have it by Friday before the weekend, I'm not sure. The supplemental will be to it. Yeah, if not, then Monday night.
We'll have it first night. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Jeff. That was quick work. I first heard,
I'm sorry, should I have moved? I think I should move for 14 and 16 that we take no action.
thought we already did. Yeah, we have. We said we'd take no action on any of them.
Well, no, we said deferred, so I just,
So now we have taken action on the 2 that are alive, but the other 2 will still be, take no action, deferred, whatever.
well, when they go in town meeting, when it comes up, won't they ask for our opinion and we say, we agree, take no action?
Yeah. There's no action to take. Okay, now we'd like to kind of go through the article list. And I want to make, when I call the number, whoever has it, speak up, because I'm still not sure I've got all the assignments down right. And paraphrase what you're going to say. I don't want it word for word, but I just want to give the committee some sense of what people are going to talk about. So Articles 1, 2, and 3 are mine. I will simply say we recommend the articles, or in the case of the budget transfer, since there will be no one, we'll say we defer. So that brings us to 4, and that's the town operating budget. Dave, you're just going to say you recommend it? Okay. Which brings us to 5, Acton Boxborough Regional School District.
I'm going to say something effective. I'm glad they adhered to the point of view. We realize that there's going to be change in the near future, and we look forward to continued open communication between the entities.
Okay.
Paraphrased, of course.
Okay, Article 6, Mike.
Well, I'm going to say, obviously, we recommend it, but I would probably add a few words to say that the town of Acton and the region, or the district, supports the efforts of the Minuteman Regional High School.
All right.
Are you going to, Mike, are you going to mention a little plug about congratulating them for being ahead of schedule and under budget for the, that'd be that kind of nice, good news. I mean, give them a.
We could do that.
It wouldn't hurt.
Yeah.
7, Community Preservation Committee.
Probably the same spiel that I given the last couple of years, saying that we support the article, they go through their process, and
Yeah, it never hurts in that case to say the money's already there, we're not asking you for anything.
yeah, it's already there.
Yeah, Bob's not here to talk about.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
will we have to comment at all on, or will there be discussion on the ruling, the legal rulings that came down?
No, we're not going to comment on them. I have talked to a couple of attorneys who gave me 2 conflicting views of what happened. So I think This is the church versus state decision by the Massachusetts Supreme Court, which I guess just sent it back to the lower court for another try. So now it really is almost, as the lawyers say, a moot point at this point, because the church that spurred the lawsuit has withdrawn the request, returned any money they ever had. So it's more a matter of principle. So Bob's not here to talk about capital. John's not here to talk about Kelly's Corner. Jason, you went to the Kelly's Corner meeting, so you might want to give the committee the benefit of your observations.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There were a good number of people at this informational hearing held in this room a week or so ago, probably upwards of actually 50 people, which I thought was quite a good turnout. The only thing that I would like to bring to everyone's attention is that the owner of the lot that has the Bueno Isano in it now, I've heard people that have been in town for a long time, I think it's sometimes referred to as the Meineke lot.
Yeah.
He was quite clear that he felt that the land takings as it stands now would actually would make that lot unviable for the current business that's on it. Let's see, how do I phrase this? I get the feeling that this is going to not be, I get the feeling that this is not going to be a particularly fast article. I suspect that there is going to be quite a bit of conversation on this topic. If I could, at the risk of putting words in people's mouths, I believe that the people proposing it are going to say that they've already looked at this multiple times and they don't see a cleaner path for it, whereas I believe the person in question is going to say that he is not being treated properly, and that the town is not doing what they could to accommodate the potential of putting his lot out of business. So I do think that this is going to be a relatively long article. I think that's the only thing I need to bring to the attention of the committee.
Well, the other thing that impacts us is there's and this is all kind of subjective, so I'm not proposing that we reconsider our position on the article, but there is a difference between simple land taking for highway purposes by eminent domain and essentially what this would be termed an economic taking, which is basically we're putting you out of business. So it becomes a far less cut and dried valuation.
One thing, if I may, Mr. Chair, one thing that we did mention, one thing that we did ask when they presented in front of this committee is we did ask if they had even a ballpark guess of what the value of the land taking would be. It was mentioned by Roland that that is actually something they're not allowed to even put an estimate on by federal law, which I don't have any reason to believe that that is an accurate statement or not, but it does seem to surprise me that they can't even put an estimate on it. And I do feel that, I personally voted against this. I think I was the only one in the committee that did vote against this when it came up. But I do feel that the lack of any estimate at all leaves us open to a potentially very large bill at a later time that we are not prepared for that we have not been properly telegraphed at this time.
I suspect we'll have years to get ready for it. Unfortunately.
Oh, and if everything goes through, they'll be starting construction in 2022.
I ever told you about the Route 2 overpass, Lincoln Concord, yeah.
Mr. Chairman, there will be one, and it will be only a couple of years from now, but it'll be bicycles that'll be going over.
Okay. What the heck, where are we? Capital infrastructure, that's Tom.
Recommending.
Okay. Land acquisition, Maple Street?
That was deferred because there's been no agreement reached, that and the land acquisition on 62 Harris, because there's been no
Okay, so
deal
they're,
reached with the tenants, with the owners of the property currently.
all right, so those probably won't even
They're
come
probably,
over, they'll be passed over.
yeah, there's been no further update on that, unless Brian has anything that you know of.
Not what we wanted to hear.
If you hear, will you let me know, please? If you hear of anything, would you let me know? Thanks.
Okay, we just went through 13, 14, 15, and 16. 17, parking meters. Who's got that one?
Commuter lot maintenance?
No, that's 18. Or do I have an incomplete list? Who's got a warrant?
17 is the parking meter,
Parking meter revenue.
which we recommend.
Oh, I know.
We can speak to it.
Which?
I'll figure out 17.
17, okay.
Keep us in order.
Now, if these are all in the consent decree, then we may not have to say anything.
Well, we probably won't, except, you know.
If somebody,
when
if somebody holds it, yep.
Then I hate that, everybody looking at each other like, who's
Fair
got
enough.
that article?
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Okay, so Christie, you have
I will learn about that.
17, 18, 19.
Yes.
And Christine, you have,
21, 22, 23. I also have 20. Yeah.
okay.
24, 25.
These are easy. Chances are they won't come up. Who's got 24 and 25?
I do.
And who had 21?
Me. I have 22, 23.
Okay. And if they come up, do you have anything to say? That's fine. Is 26 going to be the, on the water? Okay. All right, so I'll take that, and I will have very little to say about it. First Amendment right, I will also take, and it will come up before the town operating budget, I believe. They're going to take, yes, they're going to, well, they want to take it out of order. They don't want to have a discussion about taking it out of order and then another discussion when it comes up. So they'll just take it out of order. So I will take that one also, and we'll have nothing to say other than we took no action on it. 28, Tom, that's yours?
That is, the request is to investigate the cost of buying the Kmart parcels. The goal is really to allow the town to maintain control of whatever does get developed there. I spoke for about 45 minutes with the petitioner on this one, and
God bless you.
she had come up with an estimate of as developed, of about $10,000 for an appraisal, just to get that number, which I was able to confirm, 10,000.
For the
Just
appraisal.
for the appraisal. But that's just one of the costs of acquiring the parcel. There's the whole, legal costs, which, who knows what those could be, quite a range. I did ask what we might do with the parcel if, in fact, we bought it, and the answer was, well, we don't know yet. Number of options. We'll conduct surveys, and, really just want to, hold it and negotiate with the developer. But I think it came up too quickly. While it's a noble and a worthwhile goal to control the parcel, I think it's still too undeveloped, too many unanswered questions, and as a result of all that, I think, I would move that we make no recommendation on this article.
I think we already,
No, we had nothing.
yeah, I know we deferred for the warrant. I don't think we've taken a position, so.
No.
So do you want to take position against, or?
My recommendation, my motion would be no recommendation.
Okay, that's where we are, basically.
It's not deferring it, it's, I guess.
Okay, we got to get our terminology down.
Well, the selectmen have no recommendation, which I understood there were three options.
There
You
is.
recommend, you do not recommend, or you make no recommendation.
Correct, and you are saying no recommendation?
No recommendation.
Okay. Anybody want to argue with Tom on that?
I'd like to say, we should say no until we have a single plan. Rather than make no recommendation, then we're rudderless as a committee, not commenting on it at all, saying that we just completely leave it to the will of the people. I think we'd be much better off to say that as a committee, we would like to have a solid plan, and with one solid plan brought before us, we would like to review that solid plan and make a determination at that time.
Other comments? Jeff?
My instinct says that the petitioner has tried to get the selectmen to look to have a broader set of options on how to develop that property. And that, for whatever reason, the petitioner feels they're not listening to them and have more passively going to sit back and let the owner come up with a plan, and then they're either going to vote it up or down. And having listened to the petitioner on different topics, this is the most thought out, in terms of, we probably should think broader than just voting up or down a proposal. And although I'm not necessarily in favor of this, I do want to say that I'm impressed that at least someone is looking at a bigger picture, kind of what you're saying, Jason, in terms of.
I would have no problem with, as you presented, saying that we are open to the concept. We applaud the idea, but that we do not feel that we can make a determination with 6 plans. We'd prefer to see 1.
Yeah, all right. So that's the only reason why it really resonated with me, and it was quite an interesting discussion. I can't remember which meeting it was that she.
She was here at the last meeting.
Oh, the last, so it is, yeah.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Roland.
My fear is that the town acquires this property, and it sits like River Street, and it sits like the Kennedy property, and we have committees, and they go on for the next 10 years, and the property sits vacant, and thus we lose the tax revenue. And it keeps going around in circles, and we don't have any tax revenue, and then we come up with no plan for 10 years. Brian, how much does that property generate a year in taxes right now?
It's about 110,000.
Take off over $1 million out of our pocket with no clear definitive plan of what they want to see there or what they want to do with it. It's kind of going to Jason's point that we should not recommend instead of taking no recommendation.
Mike?
Yeah, I think with her plan, it's, although it is honorable, it almost would be like starting over. And I agree with Jason. I think the best thing is to say, at this, based on what we know now, the best we can do is not recommend this warrant.
Christie?
My understanding is that she simply wants us to look at get an estimate of the purchase price of buying that property. There's no indication beyond that of what should be done with it. It's just the idea that money be appropriated to spend on the possibility of the town getting it someday. And I think a lot of what we're saying is jumping 5 steps ahead of that. I don't have an issue with having that be information that we know.
Dave?
Yeah, I'm opposed to this article as it is, and I think it sounds nice to do a study, but there's always a slippery slope of, oh, we've invested this and we've done this, let's move forward with this, and I kind of want to nip these in the bud right away so that they don't end up being this never-ending, project that the town has, and, every political, voice out there has an opinion on what this property should be done with, and et cetera, et cetera. Let private developers or whoever figure it out. It's just the town shouldn't be in the property management business as far as I'm concerned. So once we're done with the discussion, I'm comfortable making a motion to recommend against this.
All right, let me have a show of hands. How many, I'm not going to take a vote on it tonight because, I told her she could come to the meeting before town meeting. But how many would vote to recommend this article? Show of hands, please. One. How many would vote not to recommend this article? 1, 2, 3.
Now, can I,
No. What part of show of hands don't you get?
I showed my hand.
And how many would support no recommendation? 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, we'll put this one off.
Mr. Chair, may I make one last observation, please?
Yes.
If, as part of this plan, it was guaranteed to be 100% commercial, then all of a sudden I'd be on board.
Again, you're that's not in this article. All right. 29, transfer of real property, Knox Trail. That you, Roland?
I don't remember who had that one. I'll see if I can find it.
And Cherry Ridge. Anybody remember that one?
Didn't Cherry Ridge get bumped?
I had that one.
Okay.
Yeah, we recommended Cherry Ridge, so
Yeah.
there's still some, from what I got from Steve Ledoux on that last time, there was still some questions with legal as what they could do of restricting it, is they would like to do it for a veteran, have the opportunity for that. He wrote, Fort Cherry Ridge would be an RFP, as he understood it, be targeted for a house for a veteran. It would not necessarily be affordable. We are waiting for council's opinion as whether it can be restricted to veterans on a resale. He didn't think it could.
Okay.
So, we voted to recommend it. The citizens complained last town meeting about it.
Yep.
The town wanted to sell it, but nobody stepped up from that neighborhood saying, I want to buy the property. The houses on either side didn't. So they're using it to dump their lawn and yard debris in there, and it's sitting in the town owns it, so it doesn't add any conservation land around it or anything, so that's the gist of the whole thing.
Okay, does anybody remember anything about Knox Trail?
I'm still looking that up.
Mr. Chairman, it doesn't look like Knox Trail is going to move forward, so...
Okay, that's maybe why.
Yeah, and I think right now, the article may say, once the town maybe acquires the property through the foreclosure process, then we would look at potentially auctioning it off or RFP in that particular property. But
Okay.
right now, the town does not own it, and it doesn't look like we're going to own it by Monday.
All right, then I'll take it. 31, demolition delay. Is that still alive? Okay.
This is the enforcement of animal
yeah,
regulations
yeah, okay.
in lieu of having a hearing.
Right.
So it's removes the need for a hearing before taking action. I didn't do any work on it, I didn't know.
Okay. And tree warden? Yep, that was yours. Public way permits? Yeah, I think those are Benson's.
Recommend, that was mine.
Okay. Public way permits was yours? Sidewalk land acquisition, those were John's, I think. Highway reimbursement program?
I believe that's mine. I think Tom and I had some overlap.
We kept
Yeah.
alternating back and forth, 35, 36,
Yeah.
37, 38.
Recommend.
Okay, so highway is Christie. Insurance proceeds,
Recommend.
gifts and grants. Federal and state reimbursement aid,
Recommend.
performance bonds, and sale of foreclosed properties.
Recommend.
Whoever. Don't talk at once.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Jeff?
So the two things that are sort of, one is the First Amendment. I think we said we're going to not take any action on that.
Right.
And the water is going to be, and you said you were taking that to discuss, to talk to that. Are we taking a position on it?
I don't believe we did. At the time we discussed it, it was still fairly, I don't even think there was an agreement in place. Now we can give it some consideration again. I will point out it's a non-binding article. But as I understand it, the selectmen have reached a agreement with the town of Concord to essentially end an actual lawsuit in land court by, arranging for some water users on along 2A to be supplied by Concord, and, that I guess we will give them the permits that they need to build the wastewater treatment plant at Nagog. Yeah, sorry. I'm on a wastewater, but just flows off the tongue. So, as I understand it, we have not given up any of the so-called rights to the water in Nagog. But it did seem to me like we also didn't seem to do any of the work we told town meeting members last year that we would do. So.
And I understand the quid pro quos, and not everybody's going to be happy about it. The thing that's difficult for me is two. One is, does it not need some sort of a vote in town meeting? Because it's a 20-year commitment, and I don't know, I suspect, can the selectmen just sign a 20-year contract? And that's, should be thought out very, somberly.
Well, again, it comes down to a couple of things. One, they can, I believe, sign a 20-year contract, but that is the maximum length of a contract I think they can engage in. Again, it's non-binding. And I guess if John were here, he'd be saying that this is a permitting issue rather than a water supply issue. And as a permitting issue, it certainly falls within the Board of Selectmen's purview. So, once again, we can recommend it, we can not recommend it, or we can not take a position. I'll try another show of hands. Who thinks we should recommend it? 1, 2. Who thinks we should not recommend it? Okay. Who thinks we should take no recommendation? Okay. In that case, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to not recommend the article. Oh, motion for no recommendation for the article.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Jeff?
Well, I would just encourage you, if you're the speaker to this, that you may say that we have certain long-term concerns, and just as we want to have now a 3-year operating budget instead of a short-term 1-year operating budget, that the selectmen and others should be looking at a horizon of 20 years is a big horizon for our water needs. And to not have as thoughtful a understanding of what that is for the next 10 to 20 years could, in fact, become a fiscal problem very quickly, just as delayed maintenance on the schools became a fiscal problem. So, I'd like you to...
Thank you not to say that.
I know, but
That's a lot to say on a no recommendation.
I understand, but I don't want to let them off. I really think that there needs to be a look at our long-term needs. I mean, we're looking at fire. We need another fire station. We're looking at long-term, current and future needs for fire. But somehow, they didn't do what we asked.
Yeah, well, but that's not what the article's about, so I'll take it under advisement. Okay. Anything else anybody wants to bring up about warrant articles? Oh, you do? All right, then all in favor of no recommendation on Article 26, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Abstentions? Okay. All right, Finance Committee overview. My slides are behind the agenda. I have already reviewed them with the moderator. They meet his standards on font size and other such things. So this is what I'll be doing. If any of this sounds familiar to you, it should. This follows fairly closely to the message in the warrant, follows reasonably closely to the point of view. So I'll start off with the financial condition. I'll point out the AAA bond ratings. I will actually make the point that, as I counted it, only 7 communities in Massachusetts are rated AAA by both Moody's and S&P. And then I'll move on to reserves, move on to the multicolored slide, and say our reserves are are down a bit, but still at a fairly high level. Yes. I'll explain what my terminology means. Then I will use our,
Mr. Chairman, you know, maybe it's too late, but just showing the reserves are very high and talking to that point implies there's excess reserves, implies they might need to be spent.
I don't think I'm going to apply that.
No, I know you won't, but they may read that into it. I don't think I'm being cute about it, it's just if it seems like there's extra money sloshing around, it tends to get absorbed somewhere.
I'll make it clear that that's not what's,
If it helps, at the last ALG meeting, I went on record as saying I felt that as a town, we had absolutely no reserves at all because of the liabilities that we have in our current capital plan, and our current capital deficiencies.
Well, maybe that's the better way to say it is, you know, while the reserves look healthy, we have significant capital needs upcoming, and this buffer will protect us against volatile swings in the needs of those or something like that.
okay.
Nice.
Well, I do get into capital later on, but then we'll go to our average graph.
Love that chart.
Can I thought we mixed apples and oranges at one point. It wasn't an average, but it was the median.
At the very beginning, we mixed apples and oranges. It was brought to our attention in somewhere between the 5th and 23rd iteration of the point of view, and it was rounded out to be average.
There weren't that many.
So we're, okay.
Now you argued that median might make more sense, but.
Yep, well, that's all right.
All right, I'll make the points that we made in the warrant message. The only thing I might add is I checked out that Social Security benefits over the same period have only increased 9%, not 19% like the average. So. Then we'll go through FY19 and we'll just talk about where the spending is coming from. The words are going to sound pretty much like what's in the warrant message. Then we'll go to where we get the revenue to pay for the spending increases. I'm still struggling with how I'm going to explain untaxed levy capacity to people that believe they've been taxed to the max for the last 20 years. But I'm sure I'll come up with some words. Then touch briefly on 2021 and just say that we don't see the need for an operating override in those 2 years. But when we look into the future, we see concerns with both compensation and capital. Then I'll go to the compensation growth slide. Yes.
Sorry, just a question. Is the increase in the valuation of your home in the bar that says Prop 2.5, or is it in the new growth?
New growth. Well, it's nowhere, to tell you the truth, but this is an argument I have with Brian all the time. The 2.5 bar is basically the 2.5% of the levy. The untaxed levy capacity is what we haven't taxed in the past.
Right.
And the new growth is strictly new permits, new buildings, market growth never factors into it.
So the increase year over year in the tax value of the town minus that new growth is inclusive of the current homes that have increased in value.
Current homes increasing in value really doesn't come into the calculation because it is not a definable number as far as the state DOR is concerned, and it's a number that could go up or it could go down.
Well, but, so when was the last time that we valued the property, or is it, I thought, an ongoing process that,
That's the reevaluation.
reevaluation, is that every
3
year?
years. Every 3 years, right?
They do it every year, actually.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm recording now on the state law, do it every 5 years, we do what they call a recertification, every 9 years. Every 9 years is a complete reevaluation, but every year I'm required to at least look at property values and do what they call interim adjustments.
Yeah, that's what I
based
thought.
on market conditions.
I thought they look at neighborhoods, and so if one neighborhood grows in sales value significantly over the value of the houses in the neighborhood, then all the houses in that neighborhood get reassessed, kind of by computer. I'm just, this is just for understanding the,
If it's in there, it's in the 2.5 bar, but my census assessments lag the market by a couple of years. So why do we have large turnbacks? That's one reason, because we never fully account for all of the changes that go on. I pointed them out at ALG, and I use my place as an example of, I didn't take out a permit, but I didn't do anything. And yet, my tax bill went up. More than 2.5%. Compensation growth, I'll make the point that, this year wasn't so bad, but on average, it's been going up over 5% a year. And that really can't continue. If you look at the numbers, in fiscal 2017, our tax levy was $77 million, and our total compensation was around $77 million. And one of them is supposed to go up at 2.5%. So if the other one goes up at 5%, what's wrong with the picture? So that's the point I'll make on compensation. As far as capital goes, we'll talk about new buildings on the one slide and capital improvement plans on the next. I will once more attempt to estimate the impact on single-family tax bills with as little knowledge as we have, but it's worth taking a shot. And then, I'll just talk about OPEB, saying it's a strength compared to a lot of other communities, and we need to continue doing it. And I'll make our point about land purchases coming from reserves. And I'll make a couple points that essentially during the period from 2012 to 2016, the town spent about $10 million in capital, and half of it went to land. Eight times more went to land than went to buildings.
And then say, and that's before Kmart.
That's right. So, I'll make that point, and I'll make that point that on our balance sheet, which isn't worth much, because everything's at historic costs, we currently have $56 million worth of open space. Since some of it was acquired in 1735, it's probably worth quite a bit more than that.
What was the figure that you used for, that we paid for an open space since, what was the year, 2005, did you say?
I said 2012 to 2016, the town spent about $10 million overall on capital, but half of it went to just land.
5 million land. Thanks.
And before the open space people start to rush the stage, I'll say we have nothing against acquiring open space, we just think we need to rebalance our priorities, and make sure the buildings get some attention. And the last one is simply, change is coming. We'll see a new town manager, new superintendent, we'll be planning the first buildings in 13 years and planning for their first overrides. 13 years, which is a lot of change for one town, 1 year. Yes?
You mentioned here at the end that we need to be planning for overrides in fiscal year 19, but in the fourth slide, sorry, something like the 8th slide, the Acton Leadership Group Plan, you say, based on this analysis, there is no foreseeable need for Proposition 2.5 override for operating costs.
Operating
I know.
costs, key phrase.
Do you want to be opening the can of worms here? Explaining that it's a different, because from broad strokes, it looks like you're contradicting yourself on those two slides.
I could add a couple words to the slides, I don't know.
I think it's a good idea. I think she's right.
Okay.
I move we commend the chairman for his presentation.
You don't have to. If you want to commend me for anything, you should commend me for sharing it, because that doesn't usually happen. Minis a year, it goes down to the last couple of days before town meeting, and the chair is hard put to get anything together in time to share it with the group. So you should commend yourselves for getting your work done in a timely fashion this year. Sure.
I believe you mentioned that we were AAA rated by Standard & Poor's and Moody's, and you said that was a cool thing that we were by both.
Yeah.
You only say Standard & Poor's in the slide. Do you want to?
No, because it's, I'm talking about us and the schools. I'm usually fairly careful, maybe not careful like you think you should be careful. I'm usually fairly careful with my words. Okay. Committee reports. Anybody? Sure, Christine.
Sure. School committee. Out of the projected 309 kindergartners, they have 302. So pretty close. They expect another 20 to 30.
It's still March.
They expect another 20 to 30 over the summer. Interestingly, 77% asked for all-day kindergarten.
Really?
We obviously cannot, 77%. We can't accommodate that, but that's something to keep in mind. Blanchard will need a lottery. They have, they're going to have at least 17 in their lottery, with the added difficulty that they have to keep it open for anybody who moves into Foxborough throughout the summer. And 44% of the incoming kindergartners listed another language besides English, which was just an interesting detail that caught my ear. They said that last year about half ended up requiring some sort of services, so sort of speaks to the cost per student that we've seen despite the lower enrollment numbers. That's about it.
Okay, thanks. Other committee reports? Yeah, Mike.
Minuteman will be having a topping off ceremony next month. I think it's April 19th.
Excuse me, you say popping off or topping off?
Topping off, which means it's the traditional placement of a Christmas tree or American flag on the last piece of structural steel added at the top of the building, and that means the structure, at least the steel structure, will be complete and a cause for a celebration.
I think a flag would do it. I think a flag would do it, because the tree might be a little withered.
Well, the tree as well as the flag all different connotations, and there's historical significance to all those traditions. for example, the Indians said, no building should be higher than a tree, the tallest tree. So you just put a tree that's higher than the building, and you got that covered.
Okay. The Town Manager Search Committee has finished its business. It has turned over a list of finalists to the Board of Selectmen. It's in their lap now. I don't think they're going to conduct the interviews until right after town meeting. So we're still under the gag order, basically, in terms of revealing anything about the candidates. Any other committee reports? Okay. Point of view outreach. Christine and I did Conant. Well, why don't you talk about it, since I was doing the talking, you did the observing. How'd it go?
I thought it went great. I mean, there weren't very many people there, but they were very engaged, and they asked a lot of good questions, and they seemed, interested in having us come back specifically next year at a time when they know that they would have a huge crowd. But I thought that it was neat. I thought they were fantastic. What's that? Oh, yeah, so the others, thank you for reminding me. I found it interesting as well that the Conant parents and staff are pleased to not be up for this twin school process. They would prefer to have their own building, and so.
I found that interesting, too.
I thought that was fascinating. I think it was a concern about sharing culture, potentially, or they like their location a lot, specifically their site, and prefer not to be moved. And so, I was curious, considering the three schools were neck and neck, how they would feel about having to wait, and they are pleased to wait.
And they're aware of the fact that could theoretically be changed, right?
I think they are a little head in the sand about that.
Okay,
But, one step at a time.
okay.
Did the high school one ever come off?
Thank you, Roland. First, let me jump in and say thank you, Roland and Jeff, for stepping in. That was done at the same time as the school building committee, which I should have probably commented on, sorry. That was done at the same time as the school building committee, so thank you very much for stepping in, gentlemen.
Well, I'll let them talk, and then I'll come back to you on the school building committee.
And Jeff, jump in wherever. We had a very productive meeting with them. We were there probably half an hour, 45 minutes. They asked a lot of questions. And we understand, but we kind of drove home the fact that you could have balanced town and school priorities and things like that, and I think it went over well.
Yeah, I think we had about 10 people total, maybe. And I may have let slip that needs to be a balance between the needs of people without kids and the needs of people with kids. And there was some good discussion. I mean, they were engaged in asking questions about the rest of the town and understanding a little bit more about, like, the senior center. One of my examples was, well, we want to have first-class education, but the fastest-growing group in town are people who are seniors, and what do they get by living in this town? And the center was one of those balancing acts of trying to help the seniors have a place to go and also have a good education. I think it resonated because they started asking some questions about senior housing and some other things like that.
It's one of the questions is, well, why do seniors want to stay here? And I kind of was taken back a little bit by that in some ways, saying, well, my in-laws just moved here because we live here. And people are moving to the town, seniors are moving to town because their kids are here. They want to be closer to their kids. And yeah, there are seniors moving out, but on the whole, the senior population is growing, and we got to take care of the seniors just as well as we do take care of the school kids. So it was an interesting,
They did ask questions about people who rent versus own, and
Yeah, there's another one, yeah.
the actual balance of who's getting more, and, well, renters don't pay taxes. And so we had to first kind of get them on board to understand through their rent, the owner and but it was kind of interesting. They pushed me on, well, where are the statistics that tell me how many, people don't pay their share but have kids in the school, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And Roland took that one and said, I'm sure the school has some metrics you might ask them. And we left it at that because we didn't really want to get into a discussion.
yeah, the one about, I said the property owners who own these buildings pay taxes,
They do.
but the tenants don't pay taxes.
No, they pay rent.
They pay rent. So, and Jeff goes, well, the tenants pay rent, and part of their rent covers the taxes on the property. And,
If the property owner knows what he's doing, they do.
yeah.
But they were kind of interested in what's the ratio of homeowners versus non-homeowners for schools and stuff like that. And it was not our role to get into all that discussion. And so we just sort of said,
Quickly diverted to the school committee.
school committee, ask them and
Schools,
they'll tell you.
Go talk to them.
Building committee?
My apologies, I totally forgot. The building committee met last week. There was they named an owner's project manager search subcommittee with a very short time frame. The short list, so that we've gotten, I think, 9 responses to our RFP. And the short list of OPM candidates is going to be reviewed in a public session on Monday morning, Monday the same day as the town meeting. Then the plan is to go into negotiations with them by Wednesday. So it's a very fast time frame, but that's moving forward. This is all in order to make sure that we're on as aggressive a time schedule with the MSBA as possible. Outside of that specific piece of business that had to occur on the 22nd, no matter what, the second thing that we did discuss is a call for specialists to join the school building committee in general. Architects, electrical engineers, mechanical engineers, and somebody suggested a security/safety specialist as well. And of course, the person that recommended that was then tasked with going out and finding someone.
You always got to be careful.
That's what happens when you raise your hand. Okay, so with that in mind, if anyone knows any good architects, mechanical engineers, electrical engineers, or security specialists, by the way, Mr. Majors, your recommendation for the OPM subcommittee was approved and is part of the committee. And, yep, and my guy was completely overlooked and forgotten about, which I am only mildly shocked about. So that's the...
Okay.
Okay, ask a question, Jason? At the risk of seeming, whatever, you didn't mention anybody on that committee that had any futuristic understanding of space and education. And the way it might come across to some ignorant person like myself is the school committee thinks they have the answers and the school staff to those questions, and that we don't need just we only need technical people on that committee. And I think somebody here, because I was listening, talked about, well, what's the gym of 20 years from now? And let's make sure we build the gym that it could address those things.
At the risk of overstepping my purview, I suspect that it is entirely possible that with the number of school committee and school administrators who are on this committee that believe they feel that that is their purview and they would like to take lead on that.
All right. Any other business? I know I would really like to cancel the meeting of April 10th. Does anybody have an overwhelming reason to meet on April 10th?
I would second that.
Then after that, next one's the 24th. I don't know whether we'll meet on that date or not, but the 10th is just way too close to town meeting to have a meeting. So consider that one canceled, and I will see you all on 6 o'clock in room 104E, which is near the auditorium.
Same room as last time?
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm not going to go over dress code. You ought to know it by now. All right, with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any news, Brian? No one's downstairs yet. No one's downstairs yet.